And when the Sega Genesis was released in August of '89 here in the States, the support for the Master System still led on for a couple of more years, but really not as long as some of the other parts of the world. In this video, checking out some Master System games that were released after the Sega Genesis was released. And we're only covering US games in this, we're not covering games from like Brazil because we do not have that kind of time. I think they're still making Master System games today in Brazil, but in the meantime, let's check out some games that came out here in the US for the Master System that were released after the Sega Genesis was released. How you feeling? John Riggs here, subscribe and all that. Captain Silver was a game that was released on the Master System, was also released on the Famicom and in the arcade. I never saw it in the arcade, I have played the Famicom version of it, and the Master System version is actually pretty fun too. You look at it and you're like, okay, this game is super generic. It's actually kind of decent, it's actually pretty fun. But you just use your little sword as you're going along, and they drop these cards which might have letters that might spell out Captain Silver. You know, the letters on them anyway. Very like Alice in Wonderland, and I think I'm just saying that because of the Cheshire Cat enemies, but it still kind of has that something to it. Now there's even shops you can walk into and buy some stuff if needed. You haven't played Captain Silver yet? Go ahead and check it out. Pretty neat game, and it actually plays better on the Master System, in my opinion, than it does on the Famicom. Oh, look at this opening cinematic here. Woo! Looks pretty cool. This is Spellcaster. Now, Spellcaster looks like it might start out as some kind of RPG or something like this. And then when you start getting selection items, like you can move and talk and look around and stuff like that, then you're like, okay, maybe it's a text adventure game. No, it's still an action game. It's still an action game that plays like, oh, what's the name of that game? Mystic Defenders? What was that game on the Genesis? You are kind of slow moving. I wish you could pick up the pace just a little bit anyway. But it's not a terrible game, and it might be worth for you checking out. As you go through these action parts and everything, then when you go on to the next area, then it might turn into a little bit more of that kind of text adventure idea. So kind of fun that it mixes up genres here. You got a little text adventure for find out what's going on around town, and then you go right back into the action. Spellcaster might be one you want to check out too. Yeah, it was released after the Genesis came out too. I don't script anything, obviously. I just looked it up too. The sequel is Mystic Defender. So if you played Mystic Defender, which that's what it reminded me of, that was the game I was thinking of. But if you put that in the comments already, I thank you for it. Mystic Defender, before that, Spellcaster. So there you go. Spellcaster on Master System, Mystic Defender on Genesis. Sweet. Galaxy Force, we got a shooter now. Galaxy Force was their space answer to games like Space Harrier, Afterburner, then we have Galaxy Force in space. This is like the Sega Star Fox of the time. And on the Master System, oh man, it's a little rough on this one, I gotta be honest. You know, and it's like, not that it's unplayable, but why would you want to? I mean, even though it's Galaxy Force, so much better on other platforms. When I say other platforms, I mean, it's a Sega game. This is all Sega. Which is like kind of cool. So you're like not always in space. You're on, you know, there's other levels too. Yeah, but with something like this, I'd rather just play Space Harrier or Afterburner. You know, and this game does get better later, like on other Galaxy Force games. This is not the best introduction to Galaxy Force here on the Master System. Paperboy was being released for just about every system, and Paperboy on the Master System also actually plays really well if you haven't played Paperboy on the Master System. Now, a lot of people, I think, at least in the States, their introduction to Paperboy was the one on the NES, and pretty iconically difficult, just because it's hard to controller and move around and all that. Yeah, I said controller and move around. I ain't gonna take it back. I ain't gonna edit it out. Same idea though. I mean, it's Paperboy. It's Paperboy. This one just felt more like the arcade version to me, even though you don't have like, you know, the handlebar controller or anything like that. But it's still Paperboy. You pick up the papers, you deliver them. You can go through the houses, you know, the blacked out houses that don't have a subscription. You can shatter their windows for extra points. At the end of the lap, there's like some BMX track, which is always kind of weird at the end of the block. It wasn't like that in my neighborhood. Paperboy, delivering papers right to your front door. I used to have a paper route. In fact, I bought my first Sega Genesis with the money I earned as a paperboy when I was in middle school. There you go. A little history for you. A little trivia. And do you know what else is delivered right to your front door? Factor meals. I'm such a big fan of these, always fresh, they're never frozen, 2 minutes in the microwave and that's it. Chef prepared dietitian meals, there's over 34 of them. There's now even breakfast options that I gotta try out sometime. It's a true story, when I film these videos I turn my AC off, it's like 90 degrees outside. So as I film this, it's like starting to heat up a little bit. The last thing I wanna do is turn on the oven in the middle of what's going to be summer. It's pretty warm here in the Northwest. You gotta check out the Protein Plus meals with 30 grams of protein per serving. There's also Calorie Smart meals with around or less than 550 calories per serving. There's keto, there's vegan and veggie. I can't stress how easy this is just to grab something that's not frozen, pop it in the microwave, and it's always 2 minutes. Even though this does tell you what it is on the back, I love the option that I can take this thing, you throw it away, and you do not have to fish it out of the garbage can because you know it's always going to be 2 minutes. Actually, I need that back so I can put it back in the fridge. I'm a huge fan of their shakes too, like just the grab and go first thing in the morning when I head to work. Even flavors like chocolate brownie or key lime pie. My new favorite right here is key lime pie. Super, super awesome. I want to get you 50% off your first box as well. Head to Factor75.com, use code JohnRiggs50, and save 50% on your first Factor box. If any title screen looked more like a Sega Master System title screen, it's all about Psycho Fox. Now, Psycho Fox has a very peculiar gameplay style. We had Kid Cool for the NES. There's also Decap Attack for the Sega Genesis. This is that along those lines, probably from the same creator, guessing. Same idea. And if you've played Decap Attack, you've played Kid Cool, this plays like that. And it's the one. It's called Psycho Fox, and why not? Let's talk about Dead Angle. What a great game this was for the Sega Master System. I was a huge fan of this because I was a huge fan of Empire City 1931 in the arcade, and this was the kind of home version of that. According to, I think, Wikipedia here, it says that it was the follow-up. Dead Angle is the follow-up to the arcade game. And it makes sense because this plays just like the arcade game. You see through the guys, you see your target, you gotta shoot the dudes before they get you. Little mobster style game. I like how you can kind of hover up and like look at the windows above and everything. Dead Angle, fun game to have, and I typically see this at conventions for pretty inexpensive. So if you're collecting for Master System, cheap enough, I think it's worth having. The Sega Master System version of Golden Axe was an interesting one because you always play as the dude, however you choose what kind of magic you want. So in lieu of the girl or the the dwarf, you choose their magic instead. Yeah, and you know, whatever. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? It's fine. But other than that, it's still kind of a decent 8-bit version of Golden Axe. And it does feel like a little overclocked sometimes, so to speak, but, you know, not too bad. Yeah, you do what you can with the limitations you have. What are you gonna do? Now, Alex Kidd was basically the mascot character for Sega before Sonic the Hedgehog came around. And of the few Alex Kidd games there are for the Master System, this one of the best, maybe the best, Alex Kidd in Shinobi World. What a great crossover, what a great tie-over. It's one of those things, it's like, oh, I never thought we could even do that. They can do that? Well, of course they can do that. They own both of the IPs. Why not? So it's Shinobi done like Alex Kidd, but you play as Alex Kidd. I would have loved a Mario in Legend of Zelda World, or I would have loved a Kid Icarus in Metroid World, or something. You know, what a fun tie-over that could have been of what we could have got. But we did get this for the Master System. It's Alex Kidd in Shinobi World. A little bit harder to find of a game nowadays if you're collecting for Master System, but other ways to play it, other means to play it, check it out, dude. It's kind of fun. A fun idea that they would have something like this. Aerial Assault came out after the Genesis was released for the Master System, and it is your kind of shooter. It's just your aerial shooter. You fly around and you pick up upgrades and shoot the other planes, and I don't not hate it. But it did exist. Hey, eSWAT! We're starting to get into the time now where they would release a Genesis game and they would release the Master System game around the same time, maybe even at the same time. Or maybe even a little bit later, too. In this one, they both play the same, but they both play different. You know what I mean? It's like, it's the same idea, same game, and also based on an arcade game that I never saw at the arcade. But it is just your traveling, shoot your gun, kill the bad guy type of game. eSWAT does have the idea that you get this kind of like exo-suit that'll help you later on in the game. I didn't even get that far in this gameplay footage, but also it's like, you'll see it yourself when you want to see it yourself. eSWAT for the Master System. Efficiently lazy I am. I ain't gonna play all the way through it. Just like Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, the Master System version. Man, what a great idea for a game, I thought. It was just like, oh, it's fun. You get to play the Moonwalker music video. In a way. You do not have the sparkly dust when you kick or throw a dance move or something like that. So that doesn't exist in this game. Same idea, though. You're trying to find Annie in these different stages. You can do the, you open up the doors, open up the windows. You can still do the dancey dance thing that you do, like when you spin around enough times. But it doesn't show you like all the people coming into play and dancing with the enemies, if that makes sense. That was always the fun part for me. But yeah, it doesn't play terrible. Dick Tracy, this is the one for the Master System as well. There was a Dick Tracy on the Genesis. There's also the one on the NES. The NES one's completely different. This one plays more like the Genesis version. I liked the idea that there are enemies in the background as well. You got the enemies in the foreground, you can shoot them, you can punch them if you're close enough, and then you hold your attack button down to shoot people with your Tommy gun to the people on the other side of the street, which I thought was a great idea. It's like, fun to keep an eye out for that too, so you're not just looking left and right, but you also got to look off in the distance to pick off those guys as well. With this Dick Tracy game, very cool. Very, very cool. Ghouls and Ghosts for the Master System plays very well, just like, you know, Ghouls and Ghosts for the Genesis, of course, is the one. To many people of these Ghouls and Ghosts, Ghosts and Goblins series, many people prefer Ghouls and Ghosts as the best one of all of them. Maybe not the Master System version, but the Master System version, if you didn't have a Genesis, plays great. It actually plays really, really well. I've never been good at the Ghosts and Goblins games, any of them, but I've always enjoyed them. I've always liked them. And Ghouls and Ghosts is one of the few games I can actually beat, so I might like it just a little bit more. The other ones are a little too tough for me, I think. Now, have you ever played the Master System version of Castle of Illusion? Now, the Disney games are generally pretty good, I think. For the most part, for most systems. The Disney games, generally pretty good. This game looks a little bit, but plays so much like DuckTales. If you're a fan of DuckTales on the NES and you haven't played Castle of Illusion on the Master System, a little bit like that. You jump, and then instead of pogoing with your stick, you just kind of do a little, you know, butt bounce thing. Wouldn't have this made a great Gummy Bears game, where you have to butt bounce on the enemies, so we could have that Adventures of the Gummy Bears game. We had DuckTales, we had Tailspin, we had Darkwing Duck, we had Rescue Rangers, we had the other Disney lineup. Why didn't we get Adventures of the Gummy Bears? This could have been a great Adventures of the Gummy Bears game. However, if you're a big fan of DuckTales, it doesn't play it exactly like it. Like, you can't just butt bounce and pogo, you know, to jump up higher or anything like that. You can jump up higher on the enemies, and that might make you, you know, gain a few inches to get to where you need to go. But yeah, very, very similar to that kind of, I think it's just because you do that little butt bounce thing for your way of attacking, and to get to the treasure chests, which gets to the points, which gets to the, you know, shatters the rocks and stuff like that. It reminds me a whole lot of it. How about that? Golden Axe Warrior is the game to have on the Master System. Well, one of the games. Definitely, like, if it, you know, like any 5 games you had, if you had to have just 5 games on the Master System, this is definitely one of them. This is that Legend of Zelda style game that you had to have. It's the one to have. If you dig that Zelda style, this is the one. I don't need to talk about it a whole lot. Just show you a little bit here. You get it. You get it. You get it. Golden Axe Warrior. You get it. And go get it. Oh, Strider. Now, if you handed me a copy of Strider for the Sega Master System and it looked like this, it sounded like this, it played like this, it felt like this, I would say, yep, this is definitely a bootleg. This came out way late. This came out from some independent company as a way to steal the likeness of Strider and do the best they can on the Master System. And good for them. It's a reasonable likeness thereof. It is a pseudo facsimile thereof. It is a shell of its former Strider self, and I loved me some Strider. This is licensed. This is the actual game. This is what Strider looks like on the Sega Master System. Pass. Spider-Man versus the Kingpin. We had it on the Sega Genesis. We had it on the Sega CD. The Sega CD version, in my opinion, is the definitive version. This one plays okay. This one plays okay-ish. It has maybe with the cutscenes, and it still has Spider-Man. You can still shoot the webs at the enemies. You can still swing around a little bit too. But cool that we had some options. So if you had the Master System but you didn't have the Genesis yet, well, I mean, sure, you do have an option to play this finally. And they even released Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Master System. Now it's called Sonic the Hedgehog for the Sega Master System. It came out about 3 months after the Sonic the Hedgehog came out for the Sega Genesis, which was interesting. You'd figure either like around the same time, but no, this one, Sonic the Hedgehog came out on the Sega Genesis. Huge hype, huge build-up. As soon as it came out, I think most people were like, yep, there's the new mascot, there's the mascot. So you had to have it on the Sega Master System, and plays extremely well for a Master System Sonic the Hedgehog game as well. Now, there is no loop-de-loop on this first stage, and there's some other, you know, like later stages, it's not a one-to-one conversion. It looked like it at first. It looked like it when you first started playing it, it's like, okay, this is Sonic on the Master System. But it has its own stage levels, it has its own design, later levels have their own music and everything like that too. It's its own thing, it just happens to be called Sonic the Hedgehog, it happens to be on the Sega Master System. And then the sequels from there would also then, or not the sequels, sorry, but then they'd also kind of make more games spin off 8-bit style, and those would be on the Game Gear. But in the meantime, the Sega Master System version for the Sega Genesis. And I'm not going to tell you about it, but you can certainly look up info on collecting it and finding the copy that has the different UPC sticker on the back. That's the one to look for if you're hunting for it. Yeah, good old Dr. Robotnik's still the boss and everything. So fun to see what they're gonna have with this Sonic the Hedgehog for the Master System. Might be worth checking out sometime. And what a great swan song to have Sonic the Hedgehog kind of be the birth of the new Genesis, and we're all about attitude and all that, and then having Sonic the Hedgehog on the Master System be the final Master System game that was released here in the United States of America. I've also covered NES games that were released after the Super Nintendo launched, as well as Super Nintendo games that were released after the Nintendo 64 was launched. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you're subscribed, check those out, and I love Sega. I say it 100 times every morning. It makes my teeth white.